Chevrolet Caprice Second Generation, 1971 to 1976. For 1971, the top-of-the-line Caprice was completely redesigned on a longer 121.5-inch, 3,090mm, wheelbase and featured bold, Chrysler-like fuselage styling. Flush exterior door handles and double shell roofs were new on the Caprice, both features first appearing on the 1970 Camaro and Pontiac Firebird. The new styling was highlighted by a Cadillac-like head-grate grille with a Caprice emblem in the center and brushed metal trim surrounding the taillights on the rear deck. The full perimeter frame and all-coil suspension were refined for improvements in ride and noise reduction. Inside were revised interiors featuring a two-spoke cushioned steering wheel and new instrument panel with horizontal sweep speedometer and instrument placement similar to previous full-sized Chevrolets. Caprices continued with higher-grade interiors than their Impala counterparts with luxurious cloth and vinyl upholstery, wood grain trim on the dash, steering wheel, and door panels as well as carpeting on lower door panels on both sedans and coupes. A center front seat armrest was also featured on sedans. Station wagons now used a unique 125-inch, 3,200mm, wheelbase and were larger than ever before. Station wagons continued to use unique model names. The Kingswood Estate wagon was considered to be equivalent to the Chevrolet Caprice being the top-level wagon. Unlike previous years, station wagons used unique rear suspension using a solid axle with leaf springs as opposed to coil springs and trailing arms on sedans and coupes. Wagons featured a clamshell design marketed as the glide-away tailgate, also called a disappearing tailgate because when open, the tailgate was completely out of view. On the clamshell design, the rear power-operated glass slid up into the roof and the lower tailgate, with either manual or optional power operation, lowered completely below the load floor. The manual lower tailgate was counterbalanced by a torque rod similar to the torque rods used in holding a trunk lid open, requiring a 35 pounds push to fully lower the gate. Raising the manual gate required a 5 pounds pull via handhold integral to the top edge of the retractable gate. 7. The power operation of both upper glass and lower tailgate became standard equipment in later model years. Wagons with the design featured an optional third row of forward-facing seats accessed by the rear side doors and a folding second row seat, and could accommodate a 4x8 sheet of plywood with rear seats folded. The clamshell design required no increased footprint or operational area to open, allowing the user to stand at the cargo opening without the impediment of a door, for example, in a closed garage. The Kingswood Estate had the 400 cubic inches, 6.6 liters, two-barrel engine as standard with the same engine options as the coupes and sedans. Station wagon models came only with single exhaust systems which meant lesser power ratings than coupes and sedans. Power front disc brakes were standard equipment, along with a larger 255 horsepower, 190 kilowatts, gross, 170 horsepower, 127 kilowatts, net, 400 cubic inch turbo-fire V8. This engine, along with all optional power plants, was designed to run on regular leaded, low-lead or unleaded gasoline of 91 research octane or higher. To achieve this, all engines had the compression ratios lowered to 8.5 to 1. General Motors was the first of the big three to have all engines run on regular fuel, and these changes were made to help meet the increasingly stringent emission regulations that were to come into place in years to come. Optional engines included 300 horsepower, 206 net, 402 cubic inch turbojet V8, marketed as Turbojet 400 on full-size cars, and as Turbojet 396 on intermediate cars, and 365 horsepower, 272 kilowatts, gross, 285 horsepower, 213 kilowatts, net, 454 turbojet V8 which came standard with dual exhaust. When equipped with dual exhaust, the 400 turbojet was rated at 260 horsepower, 194 kilowatts. At year's beginning, a 3-speed manual transmission was standard when the model was introduced in the fall of 1970, although in mid-year, The turbo-hydramatic transmission and variable ratio power steering became standard equipment on all Caprice models and lower line models fitted with a V8 engine. Chevrolet specifications included both gross and net horsepower figures in 1971, which was a year before the industry-wide transition to C-net horsepower figures. C-net horsepower standardized horsepower ratings in accord with C standard J1349 figures to get a more accurate horsepower figure. Net horsepower was measured as installed in a vehicle with power using accessories and emission equipment installed, exhaust systems, and air cleaners, leading to lower power ratings. For 1971, the 400 turbojet engine was rated at 300 gross horsepower with and without dual exhaust, while the more accurate net figures show it rated at 206 horsepower, 154 kilowatts, with a single exhaust and 260 with dual exhaust. Beginning in 1972, automakers would follow C standard J1349 and the net horsepower ratings were the only advertised ratings. In its May 1971 issue, Motor Trend magazine published a comparison road test that included a Caprice Coupe and a Cadillac Sedan DeVille. The tested Caprice was powered by the 454 V8 and loaded with virtually all available options. Though testers noted that the Cadillac had a higher level of quality than the Chevrolet along with a far more luxurious interior, the DeVille was upholstered in leather while the Caprice had the standard cloth trim. The magazine ultimately considered the Chevy as the better value at $5,550 compared to the Cadillac's $9,081 price, mainly due to the fact the $3,500 price difference bought only a modest quality addition and a few more luxury features. The 1972 Caprice received a facelift with a revised grille that was lower in height than the 71 model, flanked by a new bumper with increased protection 1 year ahead of the federal mandate. This was done by a bumper within the bumper design. Heavy gauge beams reinforced the bumper and attached to the frame. The rear bumper also featured this design and now had the triple taillights now mounted in the bumper. Engine offerings were carried over from 1971 with the switch to net horsepower ratings including 170 horsepower, 127 kilowatts, for the standard 2-barrel 400 cubic inches, 6.6 liters, turbo fire V8, 210 horsepower, 157 kilowatts 240 horsepower, 179 kilowatts, with optional dual exhaust, for the 4-barrel turbojet 400 big block V8 and 270 horsepower, 201 kilowatts, for the 4-barrel dual exhaust 454 cubic inches, 7.4 liters, turbojet V8, rated at 230 horsepower, 172 kilowatts, in wagons with single exhaust. Turbo-hydramatic transmission, variable ratio power steering and power front disc brakes continued as standard equipment. New to the Caprice lineup was a pillared four-door sedan. All models also featured a revised Astro ventilation system utilizing vents in the door jambs that replaced the troublesome 1971 version that used vents in the trunk lid and turned out to be a major source of complaints to Chevy, and other GM divisions, dealers from customers. 6-way power seats, 8-track tape players, and air conditioning were optional. The Caprice models were renamed to Caprice Classic for the 1973 model year. The Kingswood Estate model with simulated wood grain body side trim was now named the Caprice Estate. The convertible was moved from the Impala to the Caprice lineup for the first time in 1973. The 1973 facelift included a new crosshatch grille, 5 miles per hour, 8 kilometers per hour, energy-absorbing front bumper and revised square taillights, again mounted in the bumper. New emission standards added EGR, exhaust gas recirculation, valves to engines, with a new roller camshaft, and horsepower ratings were reduced. The standard turbo fire 400 cubic inches, 6.6 liters, 2-barrel was now rated at 150 horsepower, 112 kilowatts, while the only optional engine was the turbojet 454 cubic inches, 7.4 liters, V8 produced 245 horsepower, 183 kilowatts, with dual exhaust 215 horsepower, 160 kilowatts, with single exhaust used in station wagons. A new option on sedans and coupes was a 50-50 bench seat with recliner on the passenger side. The instrument panel and steering wheel were now offered in a variety of colors to harmonize the interior, and the wheel featured a new soft grip rim. Front seats were also repositioned to give more legroom for taller drivers, but shorter people found the driving position awkward. The 1974 models featured a new formal, upright grille while turn signals moved from the bumper and were now instead of the dual headlights. The taillights were moved above the new 5 miles per hour, 8 kilometers per hour, rear bumper. New thick B-pillars and fixed rear quarter opera windows were new on two-door coupes, which essentially eliminated pillar-less hardtop design much like the GM Intermediates did the previous year. Other body styles including the 4-door pillared and hardtop sedans, convertible and estate wagon were carried over with only minor changes from 1973. New to the engine roster was a 4-barrel version of the small block 400 cubic inch turbofire V8 rated at 180 horsepower, 134 kilowatts, which was the standard engine on wagons and all cars sold in California, optional on other models in 49 states. All other engines were carried over from 1973, although the 454 turbojet lost 10 horsepower, 7.5 kilowatts, now rated at 235 horsepower, 175 kilowatts. Also new for 1974 were integrated lap and shoulder seat belts, and an interlock system required the driver and front seat passengers to fasten seat belts to be able to start the engine. The interlock feature proved so unpopular that Congress rescinded it shortly after the introduction of the 1975 models. A new option this year was a remote control for the passenger side outside rear view mirror. Instrument panels and steering wheels offered. The 1975 models received a new front end with swept back headlights, revised grille, and turn signals returned to the bumper, which also angles backward at both ends. New taillights now wrap around rear fenders. Caprice Classic Sport sedans now feature opera windows in the D-pillars. The dashboard, radio and climate control graphics were revised, the speedometer read up to 100 miles per hour, 160 kilometers per hour, and had smaller numbers for kilometers per hour. The Caprice convertible would be discontinued after the 1975 model year along with its full-size B-body counterparts including the Oldsmobile Delta 88, Buick LeSabre, and Pontiac Granville. Just about 8,350 Caprice Classic convertibles found buyers in 1975. As fuel economy became a bigger priority among Americans following the Arab oil embargo of late 1973 and early 1974, Chevy made the smaller 145 horsepower, 108 kilowatts 350 cubic inches, 5.7 liters, small block V8 with 2-barrel carburetor standard on all Caprice models except wagons for 1975. In California, the 4-barrel 155 horsepower, 116 kilowatts, 350 V8 was the base engine, and this engine was unavailable elsewhere. Optional engines included the 175 horsepower, 130 kilowatts 400 cubic inches, 6.6 liters, small block V8, standard on wagons, and 215 horsepower, 160 kilowatts 454 cubic inches, 7.4 liters, big block. The last was not available in California. All engines except for the 454 were single exhaust systems with the introduction of the catalytic converter. Station wagons that used the 454 now featured dual exhaust as well. Also introduced this year were GM's high-energy electronic ignition and radial tires that were advertised as part of Chevrolet's new efficiency system. The theme of economy continued through to the new options this year. A new economizer gauge package included a temperature gauge and a fuel economizer, the second being a gauge alerting drivers as to when their driving habits cause the engine to use more or less fuel. Also new on the options list, intermittent windshield wipers, and 50-50 seating options on the Impala Coupe, sedan and Caprice Classic convertible models. Landau model was also introduced in 1975, and was primarily an appearance package. Carried over unchanged into 1976, The Landau featured a choice of special paint colors, sports-style dual remote outside rear-view mirrors, color-keyed wheel covers, a Landau vinyl roof, with chrome band across the roof, a vinyl body side molding insert, and pinstriping. Inside there were color-keyed seat belts and floor mats. Fender and dashboard emblems rounded out the package. With minor changes, the Landau would be carried over into the 1977 era coupe models. The 1976 Caprice Classic marked the sixth and final year of a body style introduced for the 1971 model year. 1976 models weighed approximately 4,314 pounds, 1,957 kilograms, and was 222.9 inches, 5,660 millimeters, long, growing considerably from the 1971's 4,040 pounds, 1,830 kilograms, and 216.8-inch, 5,510 millimeters, length. Only minor changes were made for 1976, including an egg grate grille similar to that of the 1976 Cadillac Calais, DeVille, Fleetwood, flanked by new rectangular headlights, along with revised exterior and interior trimmings. Engine options remained virtually unchanged, with the 352-barrel remained standard in everywhere but California, where the 354-barrel was standard. The only change was the 354-barrel was available in sedans and coupes nationwide and rated at 165 horsepower, 123 kilowatts. The dual exhaust-equipped 454 increased 10 horsepower, 7.5 kilowatts, rated at 225 horsepower, 168 kilowatts, and was still unavailable in California. Also available was the 180 horsepower, 134 kilowatts, 4-barrel 400 V8 standard on wagons and optional on all other models. This was the final year for the big block 454 V8 to be offered, along with hardtop body styles and the clamshell tailgate design for the station wagon. The 1976 four-door hardtop sports sedan was the last pillar-less model offered by Chevrolet. It was offered in both the Caprice Classic and Impala series. All subsequent Caprice passenger cars were pillared sedans and coupes.